Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this morning is a phenomenal woman who I had the pleasure of just actually recently connecting with across social media lines. She is a best-selling author. She's a transformational coach, an advocate for breast cancer survivors. She herself has using her personal stories, her personal journey to be of inspiration and encouragement to others. And so when I had a chance to connect with her across social media lines and got a glimpse of her story, I was immediately impressed, and I knew right away that she needed to be on this show because I knew that her journey, her story would be a blessing to other people. She partners with many organizations to help empower women on so many different levels. She's a speaker, an executive coach. She's a mom, but her most important role, she's a woman of God. And again, taking time out of her very busy schedule to hang out with us, sharing her story, being of encouragement, uplifting. And so it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our special guest this morning, Dr. Michele D. Clark. Dr. Clark, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, amen. Thank you so much, Joseph, for having me on. I really appreciate the fact that you've taken time out of your schedule to seek me out and for us to fellowship and really bond with each other and learn that we have some commonalities as well. So, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to our audience, what Dr. Clark is speaking about, we found out in our connection that we actually went to the same high school. We went, of course, in different years, but literally just kind of overlapped each other very briefly. So to make this connection across the miles and to find somebody doing great things, and of course be able to have the bragging rights to say that, hey, they came from my high school, and they doing it big and changing lives. Doing it in a way that God is has aligned for her to do, truly walking in her purpose. That makes it all that much more special. So you were definitely in for a treat this morning. So with that said, Dr. Clark, before we get into our segments, I do want to give you an opportunity to give a little snippet about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our audience a taste of who is Dr. Michele D. Clark.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joseph. Well, you know what? Michelle D. Clark, Dr. Michelle, I'm just a small town girl with big time dreams who God has definitely shown his grace and his mercy, and he has saved me from some life threatening things for sure. And when we talk about small town, we can actually just pull ahead and put the name out there. Joseph, small town Harvey is where I'm from. And most folks, unless you're from where we're from, you don't know where that is. But it's near the south side of Chicago. But unfortunately, you don't have to be a reporter on America's Most Wanted to know how Chicago got its nickname Chirac. It's very, very sad times. However, let me tell you something. My parents did an excellent job of keeping me away from a lot of the stuff that was happening negatively around that time. They instilled with me with morals and values. And so I went to school, got good grades, and I got my bachelor's in psychology. I got my master's in social work, and I also have been recognized for a PhD in entrepreneurship and business administration. So really excited about that. But here's the thing, you know what, Joseph? I'm more excited about the other PhD I got from the School of Hard Knocks. And we'll
Mm.
be talking about those things as well as how we're going to thrive beyond the mirror. So that's me in a nutshell.
Love that, love that, and I see you picked up on our title for the show today. It's "Thriving Beyond the Mirror." So fitting for the story that you have to share, and it speaks to who you are and the resiliency that you've shown and that you're trying to impart into others as they go through their respective journeys in time. So, with that said, I'm not going to delay this thing any further. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. So, Dr. Clark, one of the things that I like to do with every show when I have my guest on is I think it's important that we take a few moments to always reflect back on where the journey starts. Because a lot
Yes.
of times when we think about what's going on in today's times and the walk that God has us in, if you really take a moment to reflect, you'll understand that some of the people that you met, some of the encounters that you had, some of the things that took place, good, bad, or otherwise, as far back as childhood, that they were actually necessary, that they were actually stepping stones to where you are today, whether it was something that affected you directly or if it was just something that you had to encounter or go through to equip you so that you could be prepared to pour into the lives of other people. And so with that said, if you would take us back to that small town girl environment, south suburbs of Chicago, and if you would kind of share with us, what was it like for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any particular challenges that you care to share, you can do that as well. Kind of give us the foundational basis of where your story begins.
I sure will. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to kind of take it back, turn back the hands of time. You know, and of course, I think everybody can relate. We all have good nostalgia that we just kind of think back on, and then there may be some hiccups in our hookups that we also may come back to mind. Let's start off with some good stuff first. Y'all ready for some good stuff? Let's talk about some good
Hmm.
stuff first. The memory that popped in my mind when you were asking me that question, Joseph, was my mom. She is an amazing woman. Both my parents, phenomenal parents. My dad, worked, and my mom was a homemaker, so we call it a domestic engineer. And so I have a lot of fond memories because with her, because I spent a lot of time with her being at home. She quit her job before I was born. I have two older siblings and one younger sibling, and so she resigned from her job in order to care for us full time. And I'm so happy and grateful for her for doing that. And so one of the memories she tells me about this memory, she tells me about the time when I was in first grade. And so in first grade, she said that I put a sign. Okay, so she gets a phone call from my teacher. I was a good student, so it wasn't bad, right? But she got a phone call from my teacher, and the teacher told her that I put a sign on my desk that said that kids can. I had one of those little pencil sharpeners. I know most kids don't even know what that is now with all this tech stuff, right? But I had a pencil sharpener on my desk and had a little sign that said that they could. I don't remember if it was 5 cents or 10 cents, but they could pay me 5 or 10 cents to sharpen their pencil and get advice. So I know, right? And so my teacher said, we have a pencil sharpener in the classroom, but all those kids are lined up at her desk to get their pencil sharpened and to get some advice. Now I'm gonna tell you, Joseph, I don't know what kind of advice 6 year olds needed, and I have no idea what kind of advice I was giving. But all I know is I've always had the spirit of helping people. And I have to give a shout out to Lucy and the Peanuts gang for inspiring that because I'm pretty sure that's where I got derived that from. But my mom, when she tells that story, is just so funny. So that's one of the stories that lit up inside of me when you asked me that question. So
Wow.
so yeah. So if we're gonna take a turn though, down some rocky waves, because there is some rocky waves, right? There are some rocky waves that have happened in my life. Unfortunately, I have been, and I call it a survivor, not a victim. You know, a survivor, and then thriving after complex traumas. That's what we call it in therapy speak. It just means that you've been through a lot of things that
Hmm.
could have been traumatizing. And so, with that, I recall when I was age 14 years old, and I found myself in quite the predicament, Joseph. And with that, I had a run-in with a older gentleman, and I say that loosely. He was a friend of a friend's, and unfortunately, that young man, he was 19, I was 14. He took my virginity, and not only did he steal my virginity, but he stole my self identity. And it's so important for me to share that story because I know everybody was waiting for me to talk about breast cancer, and we'll get to that. But I want to let you know that prior to breast cancer, this was something that was very traumatic that happened to me that really shifted me off of my axis. It shifted me from who I knew I was and even whose I knew I was. I felt like I was damaged goods, Joseph, because in my mind, I was going to walk down that aisleway wearing white. Oh, us old school folks, we know what that
Hmm.
means, right?
Yes.
And so I felt like I wasn't worthy of love. I wasn't worthy to be cherished. And so because of how I felt about myself, I allowed myself to treat myself that way and allow others to treat me that way as well. And so it took years. It took years. And we're talking about counseling, me going through, and a lot of us as therapists, and not everybody, but a lot of us as therapists come into this work experience because of what we have experienced, right? So we want to help somebody else who's been through some kind of traumas and some kind of dramas. And so that's one of the things that catapult me into wanting to really dive into the academic part of it, the academia, and learn more about the psychology, about behaviors, about how I can truly help others. I also was certified in TFCBT, which is trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy, because I want to be able to help others who've been through what I've been through. And so with that, it shifted me off my axis. I started to make bad choices. I'm talking about bad, child. So for the people who I chose to associate myself with, I'm talking about romantic type relationships as a teenager and then some years to come. Because of how I felt about myself. It's something called schema. So I just want to take a quick pause here, y'all. Let's take a quick moment. So schemas, schemas. Those are basically groupings of ideas and thoughts that we have. It's a shortcut of how we learn information and encode it and recall it. So it's like a theme song. So if we're thinking about Aaliyah Rock the Boat, rock the boat, rock the boat. That'd be a theme song playing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
anything that goes along with that, like who do you love? Is it him or me? That's a K-pop song, y'all. So that would mix in nicely, right? But what about something that had like a faster pace, something like that, right? That wouldn't mix in. So what happens is we have our schemas, things that mix in. We say, okay, that's cool. We're gonna mix that in. That goes with us. And things that don't, we cast it out. How does that work with ideas? How does that work with our self-talk? How does that work with our ideologies, our self-image? Well, what happens is because of my self-image, I felt bad about who I was. I felt I wasn't worthy of love. So my song was all the negativity. Anybody who meant me no good, come on, let's go. We're gonna mix it in. Ficky, ficky, we're gonna mix it in. And anybody who was good for me, I tossed it out because I didn't feel like I was good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I missed out on a lot of good relationships. And I found myself in a lot of bad predicaments because of those choices, because of how I felt about myself. And so, with that, I was able again to go through therapy. There's nothing wrong with it, you all. As a matter of fact, we have Mental Health Awareness Month coming right. We're on the cusp of it, right? And so, and as a matter of fact, it's here. So, the thing is that we have to learn that what we go through, it doesn't define us, it refines us. But we have to make that choice. We have to say, we if we feel that there's something awry, meaning if we're finding that we're having problems with concentrating, we're having problems with communication in our relationships, in our work environment, if there are some disconnects there, and sometimes I was thinking about the word disease came to my mind. Dis-ease is one of those words. Trauma ties, right? So meaning that we're tied up, we're in bondage from the traumas that we've been through. Trauma ties. If we're finding that is in our life, get help. It's okay. We've all been
Mm-hmm.
through something. So get help because that's exactly what I did, Joseph. That's what helped me to get through between that and plugging back into my source. And my source, y'all, is God.
Mm-hmm.
Plugging back into my source is what helped me get over. Having those people around me who loved me, cared about me enough to take me to the side and to correct me and encourage me. Those are the things that help me get over those humps. So I offer that, and that would be those are the two things that really stood out as something that was a pinnacle and something that was a valley for me.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Um, Let me first start off, of course, by saying I appreciate your transparency, your vulnerability, and sharing as you have. Even you being in the profession that you're in today, being considered an expert in your industry, it still has to be difficult to bring back up these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions of like you said, past traumas. So I don't take that lightly in any regard. Um, a couple of things stand out to me. Of course, first, the feel good story of you back in first grade. Offering advice. As you charge 5 cents to sharpen pencils. Um, it seems like a very amusing, cute story to tell. But this is why I like to have this moment of reflection of where it all begins, because as you shared, who knew that just a simple act of doing something like that at such an early age, when you fast forward to today, what seemed to be such a simple, cute story that's fun to tell from time to time, makes a lot of sense to what you do now. Now, please be advised, listeners, and I don't know this information because I viewed any listings of specifics on her services. I'm sure it don't cost 5 cents for the advice anymore, but
Oh no,
but
inflation.
it's the point of the
Inflation and
matter,
education.
right? Inflation, education, expertise. The price has gone up since the 5 and 10 cent days, but
You missed out.
nevertheless, what has not gone away, but what has actually just been elevated and enhanced upon, is the fact of your desire to want to pour into the life of others, to come alongside people who need to be advised in some fashion or form of something that they're dealing with, something that they're facing, and they don't know how to work that thing out. and you being able to step into position and being able to come alongside them accordingly, giving them the tools, giving them the information that they need to be able to process through whatever that challenge, whatever that situation is. Another thing that jumped out at me that you said, and it jumps out at me because it's something that I've oftentimes felt like there's a distinction between is you mentioned about people going through traumas, but you also used the word people going through dramas, and and those are clearly two distinctive things. So you gave me confirmation for me even thinking that those should be distinctively set apart because you said it yourself and you're the professional in this regard. So yeah, we do obviously go through traumatic situations in life, but a lot of times the dramas that we go through in life, or when we find ourselves being dramatized, the way I've always defined it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of spoke to that, is sometimes we find ourselves in a stormy moment, in a challenging situation that yeah, it has us at bay, it has us in a jam, but there's actually a way out, but we don't necessarily want to embrace the way out. And so what we end up doing is we dramatize the moment, wanting everybody to feel sorry for us, wanting everybody to, to side with us. And we're saying, well, we get that you have the problem, but here's the solution right here. Probably one of the most common examples that I use of that is I can think about my own teenage daughter. When the first time that after years of being a straight A student, never having any challenges in a class, and then that first time she gets that class that we warned her about, that you're going to one day hit that class that's going to get you, that you're not going
Yes.
to be able to just coast your way through, and how she just freaked out and was all upset, emotional wreck and everything. But in that moment, while we were feeling sorry for her, we were reminded of the fact that at the beginning of the school year, they told us that your teachers offer tutoring services. That if you're struggling in the class, that all you have to do is set up a time with them and they'll be more than happy to help you with that. But then when I reminded my daughter of that, she was like, well, what do you mean? That's not for me. I mean, that's for people who don't know what they're doing. Well, clearly you don't know what you're doing in this moment, but it was her pride getting in the way of wanting to get the help. So she was dramatizing a situation that could have been fixed. And so to translate that to what you said, when we're dealing with our traumas, we're dealing with our pains, you spoke about the value of therapy, that we have to kind of get around and get beyond the way that we used to view therapy, because of course, and particularly if we're being truthful, particularly in the Black community, we used to oftentimes view therapy as being that thing for crazy folks, that was,
Hmm.
we don't do that kind of stuff. Well, the
Hmm.
reality is unless you have and until you have tried it to deal with your particular situations and circumstances, only then do you see the true value of actually speaking to someone who is not only skilled in that regard, but then also, and I think this is an important component which makes you, more credible in terms of what you do, is that you have the God component, that relationship with God in your corner. So you don't get to just come alongside in therapy with people or consultation with people and speak to them just from a textbook. You are also applying the godly principles in addition to that. So I say all that to say, for those who, as we encourage you to seek therapy as is appropriate, don't just feel that all therapists are mutually exclusive, that they all come from the same cloth. You do want to do your research and more ideally pick someone who also has that foundational basis of God in the mix, because they're going to offer you a perspective that blends the two things together, the educational component as well as the spiritual component, both of which you need in order to process through whatever it is that you're dealing with. So I'm glad you pointed that out for us as well, because I caught that and I was like,
Yes.
yes, that's really key that we lock in on. And of course, the last thing obviously is the unfortunate scenario of you having to deal with sexual assault at an early age. And again, thank you for your transparency and sharing that, because I know we're going to have listeners that are tuning in who have been in that situation, both male and female. I've had guests on my show, male and female,
That's
who've
right.
been there with that. And, I can't say that I've personally experienced it in any way, but I can't even begin to imagine how that must, rip a person apart emotionally, mentally, and just like you said, just what their identity is, like feeling like as if somehow they're now stained, like they're unclean, in some type of way, that they can no longer be deemed valuable, and how if you're not careful about how you go about that healing process, that you will start to just own that and just
That's right.
embrace it, that this is my new identity, this is who I am, and as you shared, that the failure to ignite that healing process for yourself can cause you, and as you openly shared, to even miss out on some in your case, miss out on some guys who were not going to be like that to you, who were going to treat you right, be good, upstanding men of good character and integrity, wanting to treat you nice and treat you like the woman that you desire to be treated as. But because of you being on the defense, because of you being unhealed, because of you, feeling like, no, I'm not deserving, I'm not even worthy of this, you push away a potential blessing, a potential opportunity that God is trying to share with you. And so, I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's definitely important that even if you go through something as traumatic as a sexual assault, that you in no way want to embrace this mindset that somehow you've been written off, that you're no longer worthy, that you're no longer deserving of love, that you're no longer special. We don't necessarily know why that particular situation had to happen to you, but I think if we look at it from a godly perspective, I think it's fair to say that because you've had to go through situations like that, because you've had to go through situations on a health perspective, that has allowed you again to be more relatable, as you begin to connect and come alongside other people who, while your degrees and all of that are impressive, when people are hurting, they need to know that you can connect with them on and meet them where they
100%.
are. No disrespect to the education. I'm a fond, big big proponent, big supporter of get the degrees, get the legitimacy in your craft and what you do. I got my own degrees as well. No, we're not putting no shade on that. But
Right.
it's more than that. It's more than, at the end of the day, it's more than our titles. We got
Hmm.
to get deep and raw and open and meet people where they are if we're truly walking in that purpose that God has set us up for, to be able to come alongside and to pour into others. So I just wanted to kind of dissect everything that you said, all of it, which was great, but just reinforcing what you just said, because it was so powerful, and we're just in the early stages of our conversation. So you're already dropping gems on us. So thank you for that.
You're so,
Um,
so welcome. Can I add
yes,
something really quickly?
absolutely, absolutely.
We talked about how the trauma versus the drama, and what happens, Joseph, is sometimes, unfortunately, people become, and this may sound like a weird word, but they become enamored with their story. Is the best way
Mm-hmm.
to put that,
Mm-hmm.
and meaning that they become so joined by their story of victimization, because when they tell the story, they get a certain kind of reaction from people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, unfortunately, they become entrenched and stuck in their story, in the drama, and yes, dramatizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we experience, all the traumas that we experience, are not traumatizing. We can go through a trauma, but based on some of our experiences, our expertise, our education, community, environment, all those things can make a factor. So when we talked about growing up near Chirac, growing up in a criminogenic environment that didn't start off as such. Harvey did not start off as criminogenic, but it became as such after they emptied out the Cabrini Greens and other projects nearby into our cities. So all of that violence that was happening back when I was growing up um, flood into where I lived, and so you had to adapt and adjust. But hearing gunshots initially was traumatizing,
Mm-hmm.
but then it became the norm.
Yes.
And so what could have traumatized someone else, or what would start out as a trauma and traumatizing, we became desensitized to it. That's actually one of the mechanisms, the adaptive mechanisms that we utilize in TFCBT, is desensitizing someone to their trauma, so that way they don't get triggered. I'm sure everybody's heard that word. People say that word so like casually now. Oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
triggered. Oh, you triggered me, or this got triggered. Yes, it happens, but that is ingrained in theraspeak. There's an actual therapeutic component of being triggered, not just saying it colloquially. So there are different steps with TFCBT, and I'm going a little bit into that. I don't usually go this far into the psychological, my background in psychological and also in social work, because my social work for my master's degree was in clinical, right? It wasn't me working for CPS. And somebody hears social worker, they think you work for
Mm-hmm.
CPS. No, not in a master's level. I did not. So I worked with children, family, and youth. But I really want to take this time to kind of dissect some of the technical things that happen in therapeutic settings to give you guys a taste. So when I'm consulting on as a life coach and as an executive coach, I tap into that. Now, there is a difference. Let me just break. I know I'm going down a couple of different pathways, but I want to say this before I lose the thought. Brain fog is real, y'all, after cancer. So there is a difference between coaching and counseling. Big difference. If there's a diagnosis that's included in there, that is no longer coaching. If I can't meet you on a platform where I do the therapy, then I have to refer you out to someone else. So anything that has a diagnosis, I have to refer out because you need more at that point then
Mm-hmm.
than coaching. You need counseling, therapy, maybe psychiatry, and that's okay. But
Mm-hmm.
we just have to know the place. But what I am saying is that what I'm able to pour into people and help them is from my expertise, experience, and education. So you're going to get all of that
Mm-hmm.
in me as a coach. So, see, I want to break that down as far as the dramatize, traumatize, and how people can sometimes, unfortunately, bond with their trauma
Mm-hmm.
and bond with others through their trauma, call it trauma bond, bonding with others because of the traumas that they've experienced. And unfortunately result in unhealthy relationships and unhealthy behaviors and maladaptive coping mechanisms. And that
Mm.
just basically means that they don't have the wherewithal to resolve issues effectively.
You dropped some some wisdom right there because everything you said is so true. In that regard, like one of the things in particular that came to mind as you were again elaborating on, how people kind of can embrace the drama of the moment. They feed off of it, or as we, in more slang like terms, we thirst for the attention,
Yes.
rather than thirsting for a solution to overcome what our situation is. We find more pleasure in just the attention that we draw
Yes.
from it. And one of the things that just absolutely drives me crazy, for example, is like on social media platforms where you'll have somebody who randomly posts and they'll say something like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this has happened to me," and they'll put these little emojis or whatever to emphasize, whether it's tears coming out of their eyes or heartbreak or whatever. They give you a snippet where they don't say everything, but they say just enough to trigger the attention.
Yes.
And as people are pouring in, "What's wrong? You okay?" All that, they never respond, but they're known for these random social media posts just to say enough to get you on the hook, to show me some attention. And you're thinking, if you're really going through this stuff and you continuously post this kind of stuff like on a regular basis, clearly there's something wrong with you. And again, we all go through stuff, but are you doing anything to actively try to facilitate getting that help, getting one step closer to the solution, or have you just locked into, again, just embracing the attention of the moment? Just and that can be, as you said, that can be toxic, that can be detrimental. It can keep you stagnated, in a space that's just not a good space to be in, and you're actually making your circumstances even worse, and your whole overall mindset and how you approach life and the decisions that you make. You can make that thing get worse and worse and worse. And so I'm glad you are pointing that out, because that is so true. And again, how you, just like we separated the drama and the trauma, I loved how you
Hmm.
separated the coaching and the counseling,
Yes.
because there
And
are
let
people.
me
I'm
put
sorry, go ahead.
just another bookmark in there because I know I said diagnosis. So that does not mean that if you have a diagnosis that you can't have coaching. What I meant
Mm-hmm.
is if you are unmanaged, if
Mm-hmm.
your symptoms are unmanaged and you need help with managing those symptoms, then that's where you would need the additional, counseling or therapy or psychiatry services.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want people to get confused saying, well, I had depression or I have depression, but it's managed. Does that mean I can't be coached? No, it does not. If you're managed, you're fine. But if you're finding yourself having symptoms that are unmanaged and you need to have that back under control, then that's when I would refer you to
Yes.
someone who. So I want to make that distinction too. So thank
Mm-hmm.
you so much, Joseph, for letting me clarify that too.
Oh, absolutely. And I thank you for making the distinction. And I say that not just for educational purposes, for us to understand that there is a difference between the two, but again, as you seek, once you've identified for yourself, hey, I need to seek a particular service, be it a coaching or counseling, it allows you to go in a little bit more informed, a little bit more educated, because unfortunately, as I'm sure you know, Dr. Clark, there are a lot of folks out here who are, proclaiming to be that coaching expert or that counseling expert, and blending the two together, treating them as one of the same, and in doing so are giving misleading representations of what their level of expertise is. And they could, again, you could be connecting with these folks thinking that they're going to just be the overnight fix for you, when you need maybe something a little bit more deeper, on another level, more extensive, something that is beyond their expertise. And then you're throwing money at it, you're throwing time at it, and you're wondering why you're not getting the results that you were seeking to get. And in some instances, there are folks who are getting caught up in that, and find themselves worse off than what they were before they started seeking help, which deters them
Yes.
from wanting
Yes.
to get the actual help that they truly do need, but
Correct.
because they were misled, because perhaps somebody's out there on a money grab, unfortunately, or just simply misrepresenting themselves in general, not even clear on what they're capable of properly
Correct.
providing in its context. So again, thank you for clarifying that, and schooling us, and making sure that everybody, our listeners are aware of this, because this is a very real thing. And when you're dealing with some of these deep topics, like I said, depression, grief, abandonment, whatever the issue is that really gets down deep, you want to make sure that you're connecting with the right person. But of course, I go back to reemphasizing, at the end of the day, even with all of that deciphering and making sure you're making that connection with the right person, also making sure, or getting some perspective as to, where does this person give you any indication that they have a relationship with God? Because
Come
if
on.
you're not feeling that, if you're not sensing that, and God will reveal that to you, if there's some godly presence in this person that you're connecting with. And if you're not getting that sense, I don't care, again, they can have 10 titles after their name, they can have a million followers and all that good stuff. You might want to pass and keep looking until you
That's right.
find that right connection.
What they
Because
say, scroll left.
yes, this is your health, this is your recovery, this is
Hmm.
your retooling,
That's
your
right.
revitalization. This is critical, and we want to make sure
That's
we
right.
get it right by getting with the right person or persons, or the right services, that people are advising us accordingly, the way that we need to be properly advised, so we can heal, so that we can recover, so that we can bounce back, and become whole again, if you will, from whatever it is that has us broken down and kind of all over the place, unmanaged, as you said. We got to transition from that unmanaged state to that managed state. So
Correct.
absolutely. So this is good stuff, Dr. Clark. So, as you know, obviously we've shared a lot about coming up, and some of the things that we've evolved into, and of course, as we get into our adulthood, the experiences don't lessen, and neither do the challenges. And if you live long enough, the reality is that every now and then you're going to find yourself facing a challenge that's going to hit you a little different. It's going to be a blow to the gut, so to speak, to where you might find yourself in a situation where you don't see a way out. You're feeling helpless, hopeless. You don't know how you're going to overcome this particular situation. You don't know what you're going to do in this moment. And so when you find yourself in such situations, it can be disheartening. It can be, it can make you feel like you just want to give up and throw in the towel. But so with that said, if you would tell us about a time that you felt like you were in that type of situation, that you didn't see a way out of this, that I couldn't throw no money at this, I couldn't make a call, I couldn't get the hookup, couldn't cash in on nothing, couldn't call in that favor. It's just me in this situation, and I didn't know what to do. Even with you being rooted in God at an early age, you still were looking at God like, what am I supposed to do with this? So if you would tell me a situation that you went through that was like that, and what was ultimately the turning point where you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of it.
Absolutely. And it actually is a series of incidents, a series of experiences that led one after the other.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with, again, those choices and relationships, and finding myself in a relationship that was riddled with domestic violence. And shortly after, and it was a long term relationship. And 6 weeks after that relationship ended, I had two strokes.
Mm.
I suffered two strokes back to back on 2 days apart. The second one was really bad. I couldn't speak. I couldn't use my whole right side. So I couldn't talk. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do any of those things. And I'm going to tell you, but the grace of God, I was healed up in less than 24 hours. He brought it all back. I was able to talk again. I was able to have function. As you see, I have function of both of my limbs. I'm walking. And, I was excited by that. and telling everybody my story. And then 1 short year later, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. And it was like, come on, Murphy's Law. Y'all know Murphy's Law, right? Y'all know who Murphy is, right? Whatever can go wrong will go wrong and at the worst possible time. It was like, are we really serious right now? But that wasn't even it. So I had breast cancer, stage 2, had to have a mastectomy. One of those things that we talk about, experiences that happen when you're younger that now come and play a part when you get older. When I was younger, because I had smaller breasts, I was teased a lot about my breast in high school. And the girls were developing, and I still was a part of that committee. The ladies know what I'm talking about, right? You know what committee I'm talking about.
I know it.
You know, right?
Yes, I
And
do.
so that's not a committee I wanted to be on, but yet there I was. And I even recall an incident where a young man really had made some disparaging remarks as far as what would be called a post back then, literally a post.
Hmm.
I worked at an arcade, and he there was a joke, like, I don't know if y'all remember Laffy Taffies. I know I'm taking a little tangent here, but Laffy Taffies, if y'all remember that, they had inside of there, they had riddles. And the riddle was, what has a face but no arms, legs, or body? And
Mm.
the answer is a clock. But he had crossed out the word clock and put my name and had it on display for everybody to see.
Wow.
And it was, yet see, and I guarantee you he would never even remember that unless I brought it up. But these are the types of things that stay with you. It doesn't impact me anymore, but I didn't forget it. And so when I share these types of stories, I wanted to include that because that also during that time frame, I was struggling with my self identity. I was 16 at the time. So this is 2 years after my identity had been shifted off its axis. So I'm still flailing and hurting and laughing on the outside to keep from showing people that I'm crying on the inside. And so with that, when I learned, so bring back to forward, when I learned that I had to have the mastectomy of my left breast, I already was like, I don't, what's going on here? The left side is my larger side. Why do I have to have a mastectomy? But
Mm.
I wanted to live, and that's what was offered to me as, from the medical profession to live. So I did do that, went through radiation therapy, found myself wanting to reconstruct, but wasn't able to reconstruct because right before I got cleared, I had a mini stroke. So then I had to wait a little bit longer. I know, right? Yes, 2 strokes, breast cancer, mini stroke. What is going on? Had to wait. Finally got through that process. They started the process, got the expander in. Let's fast forward, we're now at 2019, just to give you guys perspective. So started the process to 2020 hits. Y'all know what I'm about to say next, right? So in mid construct, my expander started to leak. They took out the leak expander. The very next week, COVID hit. So we weren't able to finish the process. They put a placeholder in. So now, placeholder implant. So now I have a larger breast and a smaller breast because they were going to match the girls up. But that surgery
Hmm.
couldn't happen because of COVID. Fast forward 3 years. So I was like that for 3 years now. So 3 years I was flat on one side. 3 years I had the one larger side. So with that, finally got cleared to go back. Finally felt comfortable enough to go back after COVID. Went in on March 23rd of 2023. I said, oh, 032323. That is a good date. Let's go. Get there, super excited, Joseph. Had my cap and gown on. The surgeon had marked me up, ready to graduate to the other side of surgery. The nurse said all we had to do was COVID test you, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll get to the back. Yep. The nurse comes out, this look on her face. I'm just like, nope, nope, nope. The devil's a liar. No, nope, nope, nope. She says, I'm so sorry you have to put your clothes back on. Your COVID test came back positive. And I said, you don't understand. I've thrown a false positive before. Test me again. She said, I'm sorry, we can't. You have to leave. And I was devastated,
Mm.
absolutely devastated. And that's where I was like, trying to pick up the pieces and of my life and just trying to figure out what's going on. And oh, by the way, it was another false positive, you all. I went to the health department and took some home tests myself. All of them were negative. There was another false positive. And so they rescheduled me 2 months later. And unfortunately, 10 days before that surgery, I actually did catch COVID. What's going on? What's going on?
Mm.
I said to God, I, I, I said to God, what's going on? And I was so bratty with God. I was like, because so many people were like, oh, well, Michelle, yeah, I'm sure, God was, move the surgery so that way, because something would have probably happened, da, da, da. I said, listen, my God is all powerful. Why didn't he move that out the way and let me have my surgery? He could have
Right.
moved that out the way. I've been waiting for 7 years for this surgery. So I've been from the time they told me you have breast cancer. And by the way, I learned I had breast cancer from a phone call from my doctor. Hey Michelle, you know you got breast cancer, right? Yeah, that's how I learned. I know Joseph. That was right. That's how I learned. So from the time I had that phone call to this particular date, 7 years later, I'm like, what is going on? And let me tell you something. So when I was Bradley talking to God, this is what I heard, Joseph. Because then you wouldn't have known it was me.
Mm.
Not because then you wouldn't have known it was him. I heard because then you wouldn't have known it was me. I said, okay, all right. Had to put my big girl drawers on and understand that there was a reason, that there was a lesson, and that this is a blessing. And it made me slow down because before that, Joseph, I just been running, running, running. The day after I had the first stroke, I was kept overnight. It was on a Saturday, kept overnight on Sunday. I went back to work on Monday. That evening was when I had the second stroke. So I just was running. I was, when you're a high performer and an overachiever, that's what you do. You feel fine. Oh, I feel fine. I can perform. I feel fine. I can do it. I feel fine. But I wasn't fine. And it took God to sit me down to tell me, child, you need to stop and look at the gravity of what you've experienced up to now and learn the lesson so now you can reach back and help somebody else and become their blessing. And
Mm.
that's exactly what happened. I had to pause in my pain, Joseph, and pull out my passion and purpose. And what I realized in that moment is that it was for me to work with breast cancer survivors. 3 months after that, in August, third time's a charm, the surgery did go through. 2 months after that, I started chronicling my journey, my personal journey with breast cancer on LinkedIn. And I wrote an article a day, every day for that month. And thereafter, I've published since then, I've published about 300 articles on LinkedIn. So please do check those out. And not just chronicling my journey, but also some strategies and tips and things that can, and information, education, and edutainment. It's, that's kind of a term that we coined in acting career. It's entertainment and education at the same time. So, but that's when I experienced all those things. And I loved how when you said in the first part, we said because of the things that I've been through. Because a lot of times people say, well, in spite of what you've been through, you are this, that, and the third. No, it's because of what I've been through that I'm able to now, like you said, be able to relate to
Mm.
others, be able to impart my wisdom, be able to impart my experience, be able to share, just like we're sharing right now on this Blessed in the Street podcast, right? We're able to share because of what I've been through. If I didn't have a test, there wouldn't be a testimony. Without mess, child, there's no message. So, because of these things, now I'm able to share and impart my experience, expertise, and education in the coaching programs and the events to empower others and be that beacon of light to help others when they're going through to see the light at the end of that tunnel.
Wow. Very, again, very powerful. Thank you again for your transparency and sharing. Just a roller coaster ride of, one medical issue after another, but then your resiliency, your fight through it all, and just you being straight up and saying, I was having some conversations with God, like, what we doing here? I've been waiting all of this time, and as soon as I get through one thing, you hit me with another, and you hit me with another, and you hit me with another, and I'm sure you had many nights and days where you sat around like, what did I do? Was the first moment of trauma not enough? And you're taking me through all of these other events of medical issues. I mean, even, and you didn't even talk about this, but even the fact that you said you have a son who's battling with cerebral palsy. So now you didn't even put it in an issue in my child that I
Mm-hmm.
have to work through and deal with. So it's like, where am I supposed to make sense of all this? And for many, when they're going through a scenario like this, if they don't understand how God moves and how He can use moments like this to prepare you for the purpose that you're supposed to be walking in life, a lot of people would feel like that God has forgotten about them, that He's
Yes.
turned His back on them, that that somehow that they made a mistake or made some bad decisions in life where he's written them off. And it's really not about that, which is why I like, oftentimes I bring up that you have to start looking at storms not from the worldly perspective, but from the godly perspective. You got to put on those godly lenses and see that when God allows a storm to come through your life, because it does have to have his permission for it to come your way. But if he's letting it come your way, it's never because he's trying to hurt you. It's never
Right.
because he's trying to harm you in any way or even to try to destroy you. Now, he will let those things come your way to shake things up, especially as you shared. Sometimes when I'm getting rolling, my career's moving. I'm a high performer. I'm making moves. I'm shifting left. I'm shifting right. I'm doing it all. If something hits me, I'm dusting it off, and I'm getting right back into that fight, and I'm just doing my thing. Sometimes God will look at that, and while your effort might seem to be admirable, He's also looking at it saying, have you taken out any time to 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 touch base with me to see while all of this is happening? Have you taken any time even to just thank me that you were
Yes.
able to get back up? Or you just somehow thinking that every time you bounce back up after getting knocked down that you did it. And that's why I thought it was so valuable that you shared about God speaking to you and saying, I needed to let you know that this was me,
That's right.
that it wasn't you, it wasn't your titles, it wasn't your money, it wasn't your connections. And I had to let you maybe marinate in these situations a little bit longer than perhaps I would have desired. But it was necessary for you to understand that I'm behind the controls here. I'm running this show. You're not. You are my vessel that I can work through to be a
Yes.
blessing to other people, but you're not running this show. And every now and then, and I've had those moments myself. Every now and then, we got to get chin checked a little bit. God has to remind
Hmm.
us, and one of the ways that He does is to make things uncomfortable,
Yes.
because it's usually in it's our discomfort. It's usually in those unsteady moments, especially when we find ourselves staring at one of those barriers, staring in the eye of one of those storms that we can't navigate through on our own, and we don't have that solution. It's
Correct.
then when we get to that, we get solo, not to the destruction point, but we get broken down so much to where we have no choice but to look at him and say, okay, what we doing here? Okay, I get it. I'm listening, which is all he wanted anyway. Now that
That's
he
it.
has our attention,
Hmm.
now he can say, Michelle, now that you're focused, now that you got your eyes on me, this is what I got for you. And then when you see it and when you hear it and you receive it, then it's like, oh, so this is what it was all about. Now I can take this, what was otherwise a dark moment in my life or a series of dark moments in my life, and you telling me that I can bless people through that? You telling me that I can actually be blessed? That what was meant to destroy me, that was what was meant to take me out, what the enemy would have loved to have seen wipe me out, that I could actually flip that thing around and be blessed and be a blessing, to be that, as you said, be that beacon of light. Okay, now that makes sense. Now all of a sudden it makes it worthwhile, that while it was uncomfortable, while we wouldn't have scripted it this way ourselves,
Right.
we see the value in it, and we see God's mastery in our lives. And again, and you can only understand that with that relationship with him, and understanding his word, and making the connection between the two in your experiences, that okay, the light bulbs start to come on, and it's those aha moments start to arrive in your presence, and now you're saying, okay, I get it now. I get it. You got my attention, and I'm gonna do better about locking in on you and quit trying to make it about me. I'm gonna do better with trying to put on
Hmm.
my own superhero cape and trying to save my day and save everybody else's day and fix all my situations. I know that I still got to be dependent upon you. I
That's
still
right.
got to be reliant upon you, and I'm gonna let you lead me accordingly, however you see fit, not how I see fit. And so you testify to that, and that's why he's allowed those tests in your life to become testimonies. Why he's allowed that mess, as you stated, in your life to now become a message of positivity, a message of hope, a message of encouragement, a message of an inspiration. That's why you can coach. That's why you can speak on these things. And that's why people can hear you and feel you, and receive what you have to say, versus thinking, oh, she's just up here just talking. She's just up here just checking a box to say that she did something. No, yeah, she's got the credentials, but she's speaking from the heart because she's been there and done that. and she's gone through that journey. She knows what worked and what didn't work. But she ultimately knows where that source of her strength and source of encouragement comes from. And that is radiated in everything that you've said up to this point. You've made that clear and you've been bold and verbally stating that. And that's important. And I'm glad that you did so. My listeners are being blessed by your story. I'm being blessed by your story. And so, again, appreciate you sharing this. This is not easy. Even with somebody is in your standing, in your successes in your profession, please know, audience, that we don't share in this way. We don't speak in this way. She's not pouring out in this way because she's got it all figured out. She just understands. She empathizes. She relates. That's why she's being used by God, because everybody can't do what she's doing right now. This took work. This took some healing. This took some time to process it all. So this is valuable. This is special. This is special what we're experiencing right now. So again, thank you for that. Um,
Amen. Thank you, Joseph.
yes, yes. So Dr. Clark, obviously we talked about some heavy stuff, and we know that storms can be heavy like that. But sometimes our moments of adversity and challenges can just be the normal nuances of just life, and just day to day type of things that we have to battle with and deal with, whether it's carb trouble or some unexpected bill or whatever. But what I'm curious to know from you is, when you do find yourself facing moments of challenges and adversities, what is it that you prefer? What is it that you like to do that's sort of your routine, your regiment, your vibe that works best for you to kind of keep a level head and stay focused as you're processing through whatever that moment of adversity or challenge is? What is your go-to thing or things that you like to do that's been beneficial and suitable for you?
Yes. Well, I'd have to say there's a lot of things that I draw to that, or that I'm drawn to help me to relax and to stay elevated, to stay inspired and empowered. And some of those things I have to go, and we'll share about this later as well. I'd have to go back to the basics, but I God God first. I listen when I'm going through some times, child. I'm going to put on some gospel music. I'm going to sing it out. I'm going to pray it out. Going to church, whether it's in person or virtual, those things are a constant I have to have it. I have to, because it's just like a cell phone. If it stays unplugged from the source too long, it's going to die. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to get yourself plugged back in. So that's one thing. Then family. So with my family, so my son and daughter, I have 50-50 custody with my ex-husband. So we have a rotation. So I have the 1 week on, 1 week off. And then my sister, let me tell you something. A quick break station identification. If she had not moved in when she did, she moved up when I was going through a divorce. And she actually was the one who found me on the second stroke on the floor. And if she was not here,
Mm.
I would not be here because my kids were not with me at the time. They were on rotated out, and it was just me at the house. And so she moved up to help me. And so she was the one who found me on the floor. So spending time with her. So she still resides with us. Her job relocated her up here. And now she's, in a career here. And so her, my daughter, my son, well, he doesn't really get into it as much as we do, but my daughter got us turned on to K-pop. So K-pop, I don't know. You remember when I said earlier when I was
Yeah.
giving an example of Aaliyah and I sang another song that was by a group called Monster X. Shout out to Monster X. And and so I love K-pop because it's so uplifting. It's so positive. It's music that you can listen to no matter who's in the room. You ain't got to try and rush and turn something down because they're saying something inappropriate. No, at least the groups that I listen to. And so being able to have that, my sister and I and my daughter, we went to KCON. So we went to a concert, which was like a 3-day festival with the K-pop artists, and so that was fun. So traveling, being able to learn something new. So I'm taking Chinese. So I'm taking up Chinese. So I would say 我很高兴, which is I'm happy. And 我很高兴认识你, it would be pleased to meet you. So yes, taking Chinese. I mean, my Chinese tutor, she's over in China. I meet with her every Thursday, virtually. So just and for you all, learning a new language is so crucial for us who've had any kind of traumas, particularly if you've gone through any kind of radiation or chemotherapy, and have the brain, whether you've had chemotherapy or not, we call it chemo brain, but it's real. And having that disconnect cognitively can be embarrassing when you have those thoughts like, I just had a brain fart, right? It happens more than usual because of the treatments. Or like, I have my water next to me and I'm not the least bit nervous. It's because of some of the medications I take to get the dry mouth. Right?
Yeah.
Let's take a sip for identification, right? But with that, being able to help our minds to expand and neurons to fire can help us with our memory. So yes, learning a language, so that helps too. And then just moving, dancing. Get some dancing and get some movement in there. So when we're listening to the songs, sometimes I get up and I might bust a move. So get some movement in there because with motions create emotions, and with emotions we can engage in motions to help to shift our emotions. So they go hand in hand. So those are some of the things that really helps to inspire me and keep me empowered and things that I like to do. I love spending time with my family. I love my relationship with God and also reaching out to my parents.
Mm.
I'm so happy and grateful that I still have them. They're in their 80s. And so I'm happy and grateful to have my parents that I can reach out to and still hear their voice and not have to recollect and think upon the things that they've said to encourage me, but I can actually still hear their voice and get more encouragement, get more wisdom and insight. They've been married almost 50 years. Did they hit the 50 mark? I think actually that they did hit the 50 mark. So, over 50 years, excuse me. So, it's just wonderful to be able to have that to pull from. So those are the things I like to do.
I love that. Love that. Love the variety of things that you tap into when you're dealing with moments of adversity. And to our listeners, please understand that there's not a one stop, one way of doing it, but it is important that you have some way to
Yes.
process, because at the end of the day, when you're facing those challenging moments, those times of adversities, especially if you understand the importance of seeking God's guidance in that, before you can receive and hear what He has to say to you, you do want to take that moment to sort of flush out those emotions and what you're feeling, and it's okay, and God is okay with it. If it's got to be a cry, if it's got to be a scream, if it's got to be cranking up some music, if it has to be punching a bag, you got to go for a walk, whatever that is to purge it out. Of course, we want to choose healthy choices, but if
Yes.
it's those things that's going to help free that up out of you, clean that up out of you, you kind of pull it together. Now you can seek Him. You can have that, you know father daughter, father son conversation, and you'll be able to actually hear what He has to say to you, because your emotions are not all clouded and all bunched up inside in you, because you've taken a moment to release. And that release is so critical, because you don't want to stay stuck. When we stay stuck in those moments, we stay stuck in those situations, we can't ignite the healing. We can't begin the process of getting the wisdom, the insight that we need to have in order to take the next steps to deal with whatever it is that we find ourselves facing. So
Hmm.
I appreciate you sharing that.
You're welcome.
So yes, yes. So Dr. Clark, if you had the
Hmm.
opportunity, as you reflect back on all your experiences of life, good, bad, and everything in between, if you had a chance to sit across the table from the younger Michelle, and you can impart in her some words of wisdom that you think that had she known in her earlier years of life, be it in as a youth or even as a young adult, that you think that you could impart in her, that you wish she would have known, that not wouldn't have necessarily made storms not happen, but
Hmm.
perhaps maybe it would have allowed her to process and deal with them a little bit differently in a more positive and effective way, or just taking into consideration that we got listeners that are tuning into our podcast that they're in some stuck moments. They've experienced some trauma. Maybe they've even partaken in a little bit of drama, and they need to break free of those cycles. They understand that this is not a place that they need to stay stuck in, but they don't know what to do. What would be your words of advisement, your words of encouragement to them as well as to the younger Michelle?
Absolutely. Something that I would say is get back to the basics. I kind of alluded to that, but the basics, it is an acronym. And the first thing I always tell people to do, and what I would tell the younger me, and for you, the listeners, I would tell you to first and foremost breathe, breathe. Whatever's going on in your life, pause and breathe. One helps slow down the pace, two helps oxygenate the brain, and for us to mimic a state of calm. So when we breathe, there's different methods of breathing. You can do the box breathing where you breathe in. The count doesn't matter, but let's say 4 count, hold 4 count, exhale 4 count, hold 4 count. So that's the box breathing. I like just doing it in a circle because I really like to mimic. the state of calm, because when I'm calm, I'm not holding my breath. But that does work. I'm not negating that. That does work. It's a technique. But I like the circular where I'm just breathing in like maybe a 4 count and exhaling slower, a 5 count. If you have bigger lungs or if you have more capacity and you want to slow down even more, you might want to do a 5 and a 7. So breathe in 5 count, slowly exhale. So breathe in through your nostrils, exhale slowly through your mouth, a 7 count. So that helps us to slow down and regulate our breathing and mimic the state of calm. And that's going to give us a space where now we can think better, make better decisions. So that's the first thing. So basics, be, breathe. The second thing I would say for is assess. So assess the situation, really get down to the truth of it. Because sometimes, Joseph, we are looking at a situation from a perception that is skewed, and it's skewed because of our schemas, because of our ideologies, the things that we think about and our experiences, but it may not be the truth. So
Hmm.
assess, get down to the truth. What is the truth of the situation? What is the truth of the thoughts that we're thinking? Sometimes the thoughts that we're thinking really are just a combination of assumptions that we've had over time, and we're seeing it manifested around in front of us, but that doesn't make it the truth. So get to the truth. The next thing I would say is S, and that's support. Making sure that you have a support system, people who are for you, whether it be, in a ministry, whether it be family, whether it be professional supports, whether a counselor or a coach or a mentor or an elder, but get some sorts of supports around you. If it's a support group, as a breast cancer survivor, and also, having a history of trauma, being a part of those kinds of groups that can help you to work through some of those dark times and get to the light, right? And then imagine, for imagine we were given the gift of an imagination. So we can, at any moment in time, we can close our eyes and imagine who, where, what, why, how. We can imagine how we want our life to look. And it's not just the sake of being in fantasy island. No, there's power in that. We were made after the creator. We were made in his image. So if he can create, so can we. So when we close our eyes, we can create the world that we want to see. And the degree to which we believe it is the degree to which it's going to manifest. And the emotions that we put behind it, the degree to which we put the emotions is the degree to which the motion will happen for it to manifest. The swiftness of it. So and we can't have conflicting thoughts, right? So we have to be unified, create that image. We call it visualization in therapy, but imagery. So imagine who and where, what would you want your life to look like despite on what you see? Because seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. So imagine. All right. Finally, I would say for C is choice. Sometimes I say choose because choose is also a habit, or change, excuse me, change, because change is an acronym, and change is choose happiness and never give excuses.
Hmm.
So you can either use change or you can use choice, because in the change is choice. So if you want to see some change, y'all, you have to make some choices. And so with that, when you make those choices, that's when you're going to see things shift around you. And unfortunately, the pendulum swing both ways, good or bad. So the choices that we make when I was younger were not good choices. Therefore, what I was manifesting was not goodness. But fortunately, I was able to surround myself with do the other parts of the BASIC, be able to do the other parts of those and start making better choices so I can make the better changes in my life. And if you are looking for change, I can help you. I can help you connect with me. So we can use a C, another one, connect. Connect with me. And if you don't connect with me, connect with someone who can help you. So that's what I would say. Get back to the basics.
Love that. Love that. And I think that last part of it, it speaks volumes. If you want to, if you want to promote some change, you gotta change up the choices that you make to promote that change. Um, very, very powerful. Very powerful. Love that. Love that. So, Dr. Clark, this has truly been a blessing. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. You have not disappointed in the least regard. I'm so grateful that we crossed paths and that we were able to make this happen. And as I've said so many times throughout the broadcast, I've been blessed. My listeners been blessed. This has just been a wonderful time spending with you, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So I appreciate that so much. But as is customary here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, before I let you go, I do want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to acknowledge you, to lift you up. And so if you got anything professionally and or personally that's going on now or coming up down the road, please share that with us. We want to know all about it, how to connect with it, how to support it, how to be a part of it in any fashion or form, even if it's just nothing more for us to keep it in the back of our minds to lift you up in prayer for God's favor on the works that He has you doing. So, with that said, tell us what can we look for from Dr. Clark that we need to be in the know about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joseph, for allowing me to share this. So, we have our second annual brunch for breast cancer survivors and supporters, Lift After Breast Cancer, which is my company. And LIFT is an acronym. It stands for Living Inspired, Free, and Transform. So, Lift After Breast Cancer, in collaboration with Pink It Is Fight Faith Favor, we are having our second annual brunch. And that is going to be on March 22nd for 10 a.m. for VIP and starting 11 a.m. and this is Eastern Standard Time, you all, for general admission. And it is hybrid. So, of course, we would encourage you to come on out to Michigan. It's going to be in Detroit at Tech Town. And so we would love for you to come on down. But if you can't make it, then absolutely you can join virtually. And if you're not able to do either one, or if you'd like to do either one and you still would like to sow a seed, then we also have where you can sponsor a survivor, and you can also just sow a seed of any nominal amount that you would like to do. And that's on Eventbrite. And so I can give you the link for that. And that would be, you know how they have the HTTPS dot slash slash, right? So get all that out of the way. Or you don't even have to put that. If you just want to put lift, LIFT, brunch, BRUNCH 2025 dot eventbrite, and that's EVENBRITE.com. So altogether, lift brunch 2025 dot eventbrite.com. And again, Eventbrite is EVENTBRITE.com. And so, and for this, I want you all to know that the brunch, we're utilizing it as a fundraiser. So, yes, I work with high performing female breast cancer survivors, and we understand with the climate of what's happening today that people are in need and they need help. And so, with Nicole Dean, who is the CEO of Pink It Is Fight Faith Favor, we're coming together to do a collaboration outside of this brunch. We're going to be launching a pilot program. And so the brunch serves as a fundraiser for this pilot program where we're going to have a comprehensive program for 1 year where breast cancer survivors will have economic relief. So we're going to provide them with funding to help them to pay some of those bills for the first 6 months. And then the second half while they're in active treatment. And then we're going to help them to put their life back together, because that's what Lift After Breast Cancer, that's what my company does. We help you to pick up the pieces, to answer the what next question, to reclaim your identity, reimagine your life, and reignite your passion. That's what we do. So we're going to couple those, and now we're going to help you with the comprehensive program of coaching to put your life back together, reimagine your life, to engineer your destiny. And so we're putting together, it's going to be a whole year program. And through that, the women will also receive a stipend through the coaching part of it as well. So we're looking to raise capital in order to launch this program that we know is so necessary, particularly with the times that we're in right now. So we welcome you to come to the brunch, and we also welcome you to provide support of the pilot program through your donations.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And if people want to follow you to keep up with
Yes.
events and things of that nature that you're doing, or get tap into any of your products or service offerings that you have, what is the best way for them to do so?
Absolutely. You know, the fun thing about being Dr. Michelle with one L, D Clark, is that I'm Googleable. So I am Googleable. You know, again, this is Michelle with one L, but I also have a website. So of course you check out what we have on the website, keep you up to date. And the first pop up you'll see is the newsletter. So make sure you sign up for that newsletter, and then you'll have the opportunity to stay connected. And I mostly reside on LinkedIn and Facebook. I am on Instagram, but I mostly reside on Facebook and really on LinkedIn. I'm heavily on LinkedIn. And you know what? Before I go though, I would love to give a gift too. So if you're listening, well, of course you're listening, you're watching. So I want to give a gift just because you guys are here on Blessed with the Streets, Blessed in the Streets with us. And so I want to give you a gift. So if you text me 586 685 7474, the word blueprint, text the word blueprint. And I want to give you a free copy of a blueprint that I have outlined that's helped survivors. And when I say survivors, it's not just of breast cancer, it's of any kind of situations that you may have found yourself in, any kind of adversity. So this is a blueprint that's going to help you to overcome those adversities, and it's going to give you five simple steps to overcome those adversities. So if you text me the word blueprint along with your name and your email, you will get that blueprint. And in addition to that, that's right, that's not the only thing. If you also text me, you'll get the blueprint, but I'll also give you a special code to get a preferred rate for our brunch. So if you want to attend in person, we're going to give you a special preferred access code on Eventbrite. Right now we have our early bird special. And actually the early bird special just ended, excuse me. And so what we want to do is we're because you are here, we want to bless you. We want to bless you in the streets. And so we're going to give you a preferred code to get a preferred rate for the brunch. So make sure you text me 586 685 7474 so that you can get your blessings in the form of the blueprint that's going to a guide that's going to help you through adversity, five simple steps, and also to get a preferred rate for the brunch.
Wow, that is awesome. So, to my listeners, she's laid it all out for you how to keep up with her. Exciting offers that she's making available for the upcoming brunch. So, whether you can physically be present by way of online, or again, just to simply bless somebody else that you know would be of, that this would definitely benefit. Please tap in. Please do so. Please continue to keep Dr. Clark in your prayers. For God's favor and covering and all that she's doing, because she's truly walking in the purpose that God has set forth for her, using again challenging moments and trials in her life to again to pour into the lives of others, come alongside and empower and encourage. So we're grateful for what God is doing in your life, grateful for you, and for you again taking the time out to share with us as you have, so openly, so willingly, again just being a blessing that you are. So I appreciate it so much. And for my listeners, if you've loved what we've done today, if you enjoyed this experience that we've had this morning, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. We want to inspire, we want to encourage, we want to uplift, using our personal stories, opening up wide, being transparent and vulnerable and raw as we can be, with the hopes that that you can take something from our stories, take something from what is shared, and apply it to your situations that might help you to better deal with your personal challenges and adversities of life, because the reality is we're all going through something. Nobody's exempt from that. But at the end of the day, there's a proper way in how to process it. There's a proper way in how to deal with it. And if you haven't picked up on it by now, you should know by at this point that it starts with that relationship with God. You got to have that. God did never intended for us to carry these weights and burdens all by ourselves. But if you trust in Him, if you lean in Him, if you depend upon Him, and enter into that relationship with Him, there's nothing too big that you can be going through that He can't handle. And so, for those of you who might be tuning in that don't currently have a relationship with God, I'm here to tell you that today is a mighty fine day to make that decision. We're not telling you something that we heard. We're telling you something that we know from personal experience. It'll be the best decision that you ever make, because He is truly that wonderful, that awesome, that loving, and He wants nothing more from you than to have that intimate, close bond relationship, so He can not only be a blessing to you, but to equip you to be a blessing to the many others that He's set forth in your individual purpose in life to impact this world and advance His kingdom work. So please definitely keep that in mind. And remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I'm so thankful that you took the time to tune in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. Don't give up. Be resilient. keep standing firm in God's promise that he'll be there for you. That all you have to do is walk in obedience in what he's telling you to do and have faith in you and have faith in him, I should say, that he's not going to steer you wrong. He's not going to lead you astray. He loves you too much to do that. So just trust in him and give it all to him and just watch him just do wonderful and magnificent things in your lives and in allowing you to be able to do the same in the lives of so many others. So until next time, you take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again. Have a great rest of your day.